Real talk, real impact, unfiltered and unapologetic. This is FemmeIcon.
Hello everybody, Assalamu alaikum. This is Mahvish Akhtar and I'm here with another episode of FemmeIcon. We'll wait for some people to join in, and I'm gonna need my glasses for this. We'll go ahead and as you can see, our topic it's Western feminism compared with Islamic feminism. I absolutely hate these labels, but I guess we don't have a choice. Please let me know if you can hear me. I'm not going to be able to be too loud. Hello Shahbaz, Ruqayya, Amina. Yeah, so as I was saying, I'm not too keen on these labels, but what happens is there aren't different types of liberation or freedoms for women. Of course, women's rights are women's rights, and they don't change with time or situations or whatnot, right? But the problem is that people tend to change them, cultures tend to change them, time tends to change them. So reality doesn't change, but people change. So that's why there is a concept of how people perceive them and what facts are. So facts and opinions are always different, right? So when we say Western feminism, or this culture's feminist ideologies, or this area's, or even this religion's feminist ideology, we're talking about people and how they have, for the lack of a better word, twisted or maybe mixed it into their worldview rather than the fact. I hope this makes sense. And then when we say again, Islamic feminism, because again, that's not a term that I would like to use, because women's rights and women's, the way women should be treated, or the way women should be handled is a terrible way of putting it. What place women have in a society is just the place that they have. It has something to do with Islam, because men have a place in the society. Assalamu alaikum, Faiza. Because they do. Because they exist. Same goes for women. It has to do with existing. And Islam is a part of existing. So, so breaking it up is because we have to. We don't really have a choice, because of the kind of world that we live in. I don't want to make it too complicated, but I guess because of the kind of world we live in, because everything is broken down, it's always been like that, we have to use these terms. Before we begin, I would like to request all of you to please pray for Palestine. Things are getting worse. Hi Manur. Assalamu alaikum. Things keep getting worse, and there is no end in sight. I know you all know all that, and I know that you are doing everything that you can. We're all doing everything that we can, but just don't give up. Keep praying. That's the one thing that we can do constantly, right? Just keep them in the back of our heads and just keep praying, keep pushing for whatever we can do. Give whatever amount of money you can give, raise awareness, because what happens is that when we feel, it's not true, but when we feel that our efforts are not working, And what's the use? We feel bad for them, and we don't want this to be true, that our efforts are not working. But it feels like that they're not. We start to give up. Not even wanting to, but we start to give up. And we feel like nothing's going to come of it. But whatever little bit has happened so far, it's happened because of our collective efforts. And we think nothing's happening, but things are changing. It's happening very slowly. Bahut aista aista things are changing. Upper level pe, under se change is coming. But we have to be strong. Please don't stop praying. Please, I insist again and again, don't stop praying for them, and do what you can. Agar फाइनेंशियली नहीं तो अवेयरनेस रेस करें, जहाँ पे भी आप अवेयरनेस रेस कर सकते हैं, और जहाँ पे आप 2-4 लोग जमा हों तो कोई मौका निकाल के प्लीज़ रिक्वेस्ट करें कि एक छोटी सी दुआ, क्योंकि जब कलेक्टिवली दुआ होती है तो इट्स वी ऑल नो कि ज़्यादा एक्सेप्ट होने के चांसेस होते हैं. ऑलराइट, so I won't take any more time in any other discussion. I think we should start. I'm going to take my glasses off. Unless one of you makes a comment. Please do let me know if you guys can't hear me, because sometimes this thing just completely goes. And if you can't hear me and you can't comment and have a conversation, then it won't be that much fun. अच्छा जी, हम शुरू करेंगे जो वेस्टर्न वर्ल्ड एंड जो ग्रेटर वर्ल्ड का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है फेमिनिज्म का, हम उससे शुरू करेंगे. क्योंकि हमें जो इवन हमारे लिए भी, पाकिस्तानियों के लिए भी, मुसलमानों के लिए इन जनरल जो हम समझते हैं कि उनका जो फेमिनिज्म है दैट्स द आइडियल, राइट. हमारे बैक ऑफ आवर हेड्स में यही चीज़ है, और इस्लाम में हमें यही लगता है कि कुछ ना कुछ कहीं ना कहीं मिसिंग है, राइट. ये हमें है कि यार हमें ये कहा गया है कि घर में रहो और बच्चे पालो और ये करो और वो करो, जो कि दैट इज़ अ ग्रेट रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी एंड इट इज़ something that we need to do. So let's start with what is feminism. Right now we're talking about Western feminism, like किस तरह शुरू हुआ, क्या था, क्या इसमें अभी भी इसमें क्या इसकी phases हैं, और what is it all about. जितना हम अपने time के हिसाब से इसको deep जा सकते हैं. And if you have any questions, please ask. Stop me in the middle and we can discuss it जितनी डिटेल में हम टाइम के हिसाब से जा सकेंगे. So in very simple terms, feminism is advocacy for women, औरतों के लिए, औरतों के राइट्स के लिए advocacy based on gender equality, कि genders के दरमियान कोई डिफरेंस नहीं करना चाहिए, इक्वालिटी, जेंडर इक्वालिटी. ओरिजिनली अच्छा बस बेसिकली यही है कि एडवोकेसी के दोनों जेंडर्स में कोई डिफरेंस नहीं होना चाहिए, लाइक ट्रीट देम इक्वली, व्हिच मेक्स सेंस, दैट्स कम्प्लीटली फाइन. नाउ ओरिजिनली जब ये आइडिया फ्लोट हुआ था, व्हिच वाज अ लॉन्ग टाइम अगो, दिस वाज अ वुमन, आई हैव हर समवेयर I should have put her in the first page with the, but I know I did put her somewhere. कहीं ना कहीं तो है उसका. She was in the 1800s. She wrote a book about women, and she didn't call it feminism at that time, but she just wrote a book about there you go, Mary. I have to get my glasses. Yeah. So she was an author and women's rights activist. Not even 1800s, 1700s. 1792 में she wrote a book, A Vindication of the Rights of a Woman, in 1972. So that was the book, and she discussed about women's rights and equality and all of those things. वहाँ से ये idea शुरू हुआ था, and of course that was a funny concept. It was only for the elite class and only talked about, and जो होता है ना कि discussions में, और ये वो चीज़ नहीं थी जो खुल के जिसके बारे में everybody was reading about it, everybody was discussing it, and I don't know why I put it down here. I don't know. Anyways, तो ये वहाँ से शुरू हुआ, लेकिन इसकी हमको पता है कि शुरुआत even in the US and the UK 1900s में जाके हुई जो women's suffrage थी. तो for right now जब भी ये शुरू हुआ, of course 1700s 1800s में तो when she presented the idea I'm sorry, ये concept ही नहीं था कि this would have, इसमें 2 से ज़्यादा genders होंगे. So this was only for a man, between man and woman. So men and women were the only 2 genders जिनके बारे में ये बात हो रही थी. तो अभी हम जो discussion रखेंगे वो हम सिर्फ 2 genders की बात कर रहे हैं, because जब ये शुरू हुआ था तो उस वक्त सिर्फ 2 genders ही consider हुए थे, because at that time they didn't believe in anything other than male and female genders. आगे जाके it does get detailed, and we'll see अगर हमारे पास time हुआ और अगर आप लोग इस बारे में discussion करना चाहें तो we can find time for it. Whereby for the purposes of this discussion and for our purposes जो जिसके बारे में हम बात करना चाह रहे हैं, we'll stick to what suits our needs. Okay, so historically जो feminism के 4 categories हैं, जिसपे categories भी नहीं कहना चाहिए, categories is a different thing. जो phases आई हैं, categories हम discuss करेंगे in a minute, but historically जो phases आई हैं, okay, where did it start and then how it evolved, there's 4 of them. सबसे पहली चीज़, अब जब वो book लिखी गई थी और वो introduce करवाया था उन खातून ने, तो उस वक्त she was talking about everything, ठीक है ना. तो it wasn't taken very seriously, and it was like हाँ ठीक है elite class के लिए चलो ठीक है हाँ, but किसी हद तक था भी, but not really. अब उसकी it's very interesting details in that, but again time constraints and not really relevant to what we need to talk about today. So पहली wave जो थी वो right to vote. अब इसको हम थोड़ा सा डिस्कस करेंगे, but let me go over all of them. फिर जो उसके बाद जो दूसरी वेव आई थी वो उसके थोड़ा सा ही बाद फ़ौरन साथ ही जैसे women's right to vote हुआ, which was in 1920s or so, women's liberation, promoting other liberation, have the right to work, have the right to go out of the house, and in ways that they didn't before. More freedom. Miyan ki baat kyun mane? Father, why is the father responsible for us? And many different things. And we'll discuss that जब हम जो key areas हैं जिन पे focus करेंगे तो we'll discuss that. Then फिर बात foreign news पे आ जाती है कि diversity and intersectionality, and that's where really we're going to be ज़्यादा discussion हमारी वहाँ पर होगी. Diversity is different types of people, ठीक है ना. चूँकि हम जैसे हमने बात की कि ये elite UK US उस ज़माने में, and then ज़्यादातर वहीं पर those were the powers, and then Russia and USSR, ये सब गोरे लोगों की दुनिया है, right? तो ये third wave थी जब immigrations होने लगी, दूसरी दुनिया के लोग भी आने लगे, तो फिर ये कि इसको diversify होना चाहिए और औरतों को भी थोड़ा सा बोलने का हक होना चाहिए. अब इसको थोड़ा सा हम इसको वो करते हैं, डिस्कस करते हैं. जो फोर्थ वेव थी, जो recent wave है, जो 80s and 90s में, कि let women use social media with safety and trust them with it. क्योंकि फिर ये भी तो था ना कि ओह ये कंप्यूटर में कहाँ करेगी, इसको मैथ कहाँ आती है, इसको ये हमने भी देखा है हमारे कल्चर में अभी तक होता है. हम देयर आर अ लॉट ऑफ वुमेन हु आर टेक्नोलॉजिकली रियली गुड, और हम रूरल एरियाज में जाते हैं, दे डोंट हैव फोन्स, देयर हस्बैंड्स एंड देयर फादर्स एंड brothers don't want them to have phones because they think they can't handle them. When you sit down with them and you teach them computer, एक दो हफ्ते में they get very good at it. लेकिन उनके family members don't think that they can handle it. So ये जो diversity, intersectionality और जो ये है digital media वाली, ये जो दो feminism के parts हैं, western feminism के, these are still relevant. And ये दो waves आई तो बारी बारी हैं, but ये अभी भी relevant है. They're still, Western feminism is still working on them. It's not there yet. They're still struggling with, oh, female gamer, oh my gosh, that's such a big deal. And you're doing something in computer science, oh, you're a math whiz. Abhi bhi it's a big deal. कोई मर्द ये बात कहेगा तो it's not a big deal, but औरत ये बात कहेगी तो it's a big deal in that world. हमारे world में भी of course, but हम अपने everyday की बात नहीं कर रहे, हम अपने सोसाइटी की और कल्चर की बात नहीं कर रहे, हम इस्लाम की बात करेंगे. तो दिस इज डिफरेंट बिकॉज दे डोंट हैव ए सेंट्रल, हम we're just saying western feminism because उनका कोई central combining factor नहीं है, कोई ऐसी चीज़, उनका कोई glue नहीं है that they can go back to. ठीक है ना. अगर उनके religion को भी लें तो there are many sections of their religion. ठीक है ना. उनके आप कल्चर को ले लें तो हर कंट्री में बेतहाशा कल्चर्स हैं. सो देयर इज नो सॉलिड थिंग दैट दे कैन गो बैक टू. सो देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ इश्यूज विद दैट. हमारे तो अगर आप कोई कल्चर्स की बात करें, ऑफ कोर्स हमारे मिडल ईस्ट में, साउथ एशिया में, ईस्ट एशिया में, हर जगह बेतहाशा कल्चर्स हैं. बट वी हैव a glue that unifies us, और हमें एक जगह पे ले आता है जो कि इस्लाम है. तो हम उसको हम ये नहीं करेंगे कि अरब फेमिनिज्म एंड ईस्ट एशियन फेमिनिज्म एंड साउथ एशियन फेमिनिज्म एंड डिफरेंट एरियाज का फेमिनिज्म, वी आर डूइंग इस्लाम बिकॉज वी कैन ऑल, चाहे जितने भी हम डिफरेंट हैं, जहाँ जहाँ के भी हमारे कल्चर्स हैं, वी कैन देन अबैंडन दोज कल्चर्स एंड कम टू इस्लाम. ओके, अब जो की एरियाज फोकस में आते हैं इन सब के, अगेन आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट फेमिनिज्म, वेस्टर्न फेमिनिज्म, किन किन एरियाज पे ये फोकस करते हैं. वैसे तो इट चेंजेस विद टाइम, अगेन बिकॉज हम फेमिनिज्म की बात कर रहे हैं ना, कि ये व्हाट काइंड ऑफ फेमिनिज्म इज इट, इट्स वेस्टर्न फेमिनिज्म. सो विद टाइम, अब आपने देखा कि इसकी ये फेजेस, ये तो मैंने मोटी मोटी फेजेस बताई हैं, उन फेजेस के बीच में भी बेतहाशा फेजेस आती हैं, क्योंकि टाइम सिर्फ डेकेड्स में तो मूव नहीं करता ना, टाइम तो ईयर्स में मूव करता है, वीक्स एंड डेज एंड मंथ्स, it moves in hours, and things, especially now, things change so fast. You learn about different cultures and different people so fast कि उस movement में you learn so much that things start to move. Even feminism starts to move in all sorts of directions. So ये तो बड़ी बड़ी phases थी, और अब जो phases आ रही हैं इसके बाद, ये डिजिटल मीडिया वाली phase जो है, इसमें there have been so many new phases, so many changes, जो कि हमने कहा है कि हम डिस्कस नहीं करेंगे related to LGBTQ. अगर हम उसमें पड़ जाएं तो that's going to be, and we'll have to a little bit, अभी तो हम शुरू पे ही हैं, थोड़ा बहुत हम उसको मेंशन करेंगे, बट उसमें चले जाएं अगर हम अभी, तो that's a whole new can of worms that is just, you can't put any kind of cover on because there's no answers there at all if you're looking at it from the Western point of view. तो अब इसमें जो areas हैं जिन पे फोकस फेमिनिज्म करने की कोशिश करता है हमारा वेस्टर्न फेमिनिज्म, पॉलिटिकल इक्वालिटी, कि औरतों को भी वही पॉलिटिकल राइट्स होने चाहिए जो मर्दों को हैं, which makes sense. So we know about the suffrage women's suffrage movement. Usme we know the key participants. 19th century में, this happened in 19th century, and let me just read the names of the people, get that out of the way. Susan B. Anthony, Lucretia Mott, and Stanton. So these women started a movement saying that they want women to vote, and they should have a right and to have representation in the decisions that get made about women. And that made sense. So US में शुरू हुई, फिर UK में शुरू हुई, and these are the two big superpowers. And यहाँ पे शुरू हो जाएगी तो फिर छोटी-छोटी जगहों पे, that's what they assumed, होती जाएगी, right? You know, political वो मिलती जाएगी. So US got the women got the right to vote in the US in 1920, and then UK got the right to vote for women in 1928. Now, we were talking about intersectional and diversity in feminism. Black women couldn't secure their proper voting right until at least 1965. Now, जब right to vote औरतों के लिए secure हुआ in the US, especially, वहाँ पे even in the UK, उसमें कोई ऐसा नहीं लिखा था कि black women and white women and race and this and that, but white women would say they didn't want black women to vote because they didn't think that the black women, African American women, were equal to them. ठीक है ना? Slavery had been abolished, लेकिन अभी तक वही चीज़ थी कि colored people, which meant African Americans, उनके खाने पीने की जगह भी अलग थी, उनके बैठने की जगह भी अलग थी, उनके restaurants भी अलग थे. They didn't mingle. So for them to have the same rights as white women was just not okay. They didn't think कि ये औरतें इन औरतों को क्या पता, ये औरतें इतनी smart, इतनी intelligent, इतनी पढ़ी लिखी थोड़ी हैं जैसे हमें. So this was a problem. So even rights मिल भी गए तो they were blocked, they were discouraged, they were beaten up if they came to the polls. तो बहुत ही मेहनत के बाद, बहुत सालों की, just they had double, triple the struggle. In 1965 में जाके इस तरह से हुआ कि there was no more, struggle तो उनके लिए अभी तक है, to be recognized as equal to white women and then equal to all the people. उनके तो मर्दों को भी अभी तक struggle करना पड़ रहा है. But they got the right to properly vote, and to the point where they cannot be stopped, and that nobody can just easily say get out of the polling booth. So this is a struggle that white feminism, I would call it, to the point. Okay, but people over there don't. But with Western feminism, and we'll talk about, we'll keep talking about it, doesn't realize these things. So when you talk about it, oh, we were the first ones who got women the right to vote, and then the rest is just बिल्कुल ऐसे clean out हो जाता है जैसे ये सब चीज़ें हैं ही नहीं, कि जिन लोगों ने right दिलवाया voting का, जैसे उन लोगों ने ये सब किया ही नहीं. उन्हीं लोगों ने ये सब किया ही नहीं कि औरतों को ये नहीं देखा कि ब्लैक औरतों के साथ क्या हो रहा है, ये नहीं देखा कि वो औरतें पिट भी रही हैं, वो औरतें थ्रेटन भी हो रही हैं, उनके घरों में जा के उनको डराया जा रहा है in front of their kids and their other family members. इन सब चीज़ों को हाईलाइट नहीं किया गया. So that is the problem with this kind of feminism, जो कि बहुत देखा जाता है. Okay, so the next thing, पहली चीज़ जो हमने we notified was political feminism, and उस चीज़ को अगर हम निकाल दें intersectionalism को, तो this is the aim of feminism, which is not a bad idea, of course, कि औरतों को political rights होने चाहिए, voting का right, and to have political offices and all of those things. So of course, that's definitely something to be part of feminism. Economic equality. Feminism works to achieve कि औरतों के पास वही opportunities economically होनी चाहिए जो मर्दों के पास हैं कि they should be able to earn, they should be able to save their money, they should be able to go out and earn and invest and जो opportunities मर्दों के पास हैं. That's understandable. Social equality. Feminism challenges gender stereotypes, promotes gender inclusive language, and aims to create a society where women are not marginalized or discriminated against in social and cultural spheres. You know what this makes me think of? Social equality. And यहाँ पे it's saying a gender inclusive language. And I know they mean more than what I'm going to say right now, लेकिन मुझे जो ध्यान में आता है ना कि it's just very interesting to me कि अगर आप WhatsApp groups वगैरह में देखें तो अक्सर you'll notice even if there's families in the group and family chats में especially होता है जो family के groups होते हैं बहन भाइयों के और उनके बच्चे भी हैं मियाँ और बीवी भी हैं और सब इस तरह के कि just making fun of the wife no matter who the wife is. It could be like you could be talking to your sister's husband, like आपका बहनों होगा आपकी बहन भी है उसमें, and you're talking to like अपने बहन के मियाँ से आप बात कर रहे हैं and you're joking about how your wife and how annoying she is and how much she bothers you and just generally something like that. And it's funny to everybody and even your sister is laughing and if you ask her she'll just say, oh, it's a joke, yeah, what's the big deal? लेकिन मियाँ के बारे में कोई इस तरह का जोक नहीं करता और अगर करता भी है तो the wife will herself will shut it down कि यह क्या सबके सामने इस तरह के मजाक कर रहे हो मेरे मियाँ के बारे में. This is not okay, it's inappropriate. इज्जत करनी चाहिए, मेरा भी मियाँ है, तुम्हारा बहनोई है, घर का दामाद है. Don't talk like that. That's a general thing that happens. लेकिन बीवी बहू बेटी whoever इसके बारे में इस तरह का मजाक हो रहा हो तो people don't really take it as seriously. This is the kind of language, inclusive language and treatment and immersive kind of behavior that I feel it's one example, very small example, but one of the examples that I think social equality is meant by it. Because I've never appreciated jokes like that. And it's not because, oh, I'm such a prude and I'm such a, I can't take a joke on about myself. If we're sitting together and we're joking about each other, that would be totally fine with me. But if it's specifically that kind of joke, but in a way where if it was turned around on a man and it wouldn't be okay and everybody would stop me कि क्यों अपने भाई के बारे में ऐसी बात कर रही हो या अपने मियाँ के बारे में ऐसी बात कर रही हो, then I would be bothered. That when it was being done to me, that was okay. But now that I'm doing it about my husband or about my brother or father, well, not really father, but brother or husband or my brother-in-law, you guys are bothered by it. Okay, so the next is reproductive rights. Of course, body में क्या हो रहा है, she needs to be able to control बच्चे कितने होने, किस तरह होने, कब होने, किसके साथ होने, all of those things. Of course, she should have, it should be with her consent. और इसमें फिर शादी भी आ जाती है, इसमें सब चीज़ें इसमें आ जाती हैं. Education, of course. Now we go to diverse forms of feminism. So these were the key things that feminism, Western feminism focuses on. And now we're talking about diverse form of feminism. अब feminism बहुत सारी उसमें बढ़ गया है. It's not just one feminism. कि एक तरह का feminism है, हम सब ये feminism, हम सब feminist हैं और हम इन areas पे काम करते हैं. Right? कि हम औरतों के political rights, social rights, economic rights, reproductive rights और education के benefit के लिए काम करते हैं. It's not just that now. And if honestly, अगर सिर्फ यही चीज़ें हो रही होती ना, तो I would be like, yeah, okay. I think I'm a feminist. I'm good with that. But the problem is, that it has grown to such an extent and it has gotten so complicated. So there's liberal feminism. और ये तो सिर्फ थोड़ी सी बता रही हूँ मैं. There's so many other types of feminism that it's the words, the buzzwords, and the I'm not this kind of feminism, I'm this kind of feminist, I'm not this kind of feminist, I'm that kind of feminist. दिमाग घूम जाता है इंसान का. Liberal feminism focuses on achieving equality with the existing political and legal system. So liberal feminist within जो political system है उसके अंदर रह के equal rights और जो हमने सारी जो चीज़ें डिस्कस की हैं through policy changes, लेकिन within the political system and within the culture, उसके साथ ही especially political system के साथ changes लाने की कोशिश करते हैं. Radical feminism, they just want to change everything. They just want to throw everything out and bring a drastic change. They think this is not working, तो इसको ख़त्म करो, इसको change करो, इसको everything has to be new, everything has to be, start from scratch kind of theory. Cultural feminism celebrates and emphasizes women's unique qualities and contributions, often focusing on nurturing and caregiving roles. So that believes in women being nurturers, almost believes in the stereotype that women are nurturers and they're caregivers, and if we focus on those attributes, we can get women more involved in the communities and get them to spread what their goal is as feminists, and whatever that might be. Every cultural feminist society or organization has their own goals. So then there's from one feminist group, then you have like other subgroups sprouting out. Socialist feminism analyzes gender inequality in the context of class and capitalism. So this is kind of a subgroup of intersectional, where it's like class and capitalism and who has more power, who has more money, and then they want everybody to be equal, including the marginalized, including the ones who are not just, the elite or the powerful, everybody. That's what socialism is in general. And then socialist feminists then look at जो औरतों का group है, then they look at those. Intersectional feminism is, we've been talking about it, recognizes that gender inequality is shaped by other social categories. क्योंकि gender inequality सिर्फ ये नहीं है कि औरतें के मर्द औरतों को पीछे रखते हैं, उसमें फिर रेस की डिस्क्रिमिनेशन भी आती है कि white women keep brown and black women, जैसे हमने वोटिंग की बात की, वोटिंग राइट्स की बात की, फिर उसमें क्लास की बात भी आ जाती है, ठीक है ना. as far as we are concerned, we talked about it. फिर उसमें डिसेबिलिटी की बात भी आ जाती है कि a lot of disabled people don't get. अभी तो हमने सिर्फ healthy black women, we talked about African American women. We didn't go in the direction of brown women, क्योंकि even to this day, जो African American औरतें हैं, they don't like brown people. They don't like us a lot of the times. They don't think their problems are the same as our problem, which they're not. उनकी ज़िंदगी बहुत मुश्किल है हमसे, ठीक है ना. तो वो जो differences हैं, but they still think कि अगर, because America is their country, right? America, Canada, UK, वहाँ पे पले बड़े हैं, वहाँ उनकी country, obviously. So, and they want to fit in. They want to fit in with the white people there. तो ये होता है कि अगर दोनों का group है, and I'm telling you, this is an absolute fact, ये हो चुका है हमारे साथ. And and it's always baffles me कि but I get it, but it's just in the moment जब ये हो रहा होता है ना, तो it's really baffling कि गोरा का ग्रुप है, आप कहीं बाहर ऐसे ही निकले हुए हैं, like you're just you know in a park or you're somewhere just hanging out, गोरे 5-6 गोरे बैठे हुए हैं, कुछ you know अफ्रीकन अमेरिकन हैं 3-4 हम लोग बैठे हुए होता है, आप पार्क में बैठे हैं कहीं तो करीब करीब हैं तो बातचीत शुरू हो जाती है. अब अगर वो गोरे नहीं होंगे तो जो काले बैठे हैं वो हमसे बातचीत कर लेंगे, गपशप भी कर लेंगे. हर किसी की बात नहीं कर रही हूँ, आई एम जस्ट रैंडमली टेलिंग यू, बट दिस हैपेंस अ लॉट. वो हमसे बातचीत भी कर लेंगे. Okay, so hello to everybody who's just joined me in the past 10 to 15 minutes. I was just on a roll. तो वो हमसे बातचीत भी कर लेंगे, ठीक है ना. अब गोरे आके बैठेंगे, अगर वो गोरे हमको लिफ्ट ना कराएं, जो कि अक्सर नहीं कराते, तो वो काले भी हमसे बात करना छोड़ देंगे. And they'll just pretend like they weren't talking to us, and we have no like, they have no interest in like hanging out or talking to us or just random conversation, like उनको कोई interest नहीं है. And usually we used to be like, what happened? What is it? Because कि वो लोग आके बैठ गए यहाँ पे और वो हमको लिफ्ट नहीं करा रहे हैं, क्या हो गया? So the thing is कि we are even lower in the hierarchy, right? Because those guys, African Americans, they're American because they have no other home, absolutely nowhere else to go. ठीक है ना. हम तो even if we're born there, raised there, we still have a connection to some other country. So they want to be one or on the same level as the white people, and you can't blame them because they have nothing to fall back on. So they feel like the white people hate the brown people even more because, you know, or should at least. So they want their connection to be with the white people. So they're like, look, you're cool as long as the white people like you. If they don't like you, then you gotta go. You can't be in our circle. Zahir, this is not the right behavior. Lekin the point is that is how racism, stereotypical racism works. And if you just apply it only on women, अब आप मर्दों को और बाकी कल्चर के फैक्टर्स को निकाल दें, अब आप औरतों पे खाली इसको अप्लाई करें, तो ये एक पावर डायनामिक है ना कि वाइट औरतें सबसे ऊपर आती हैं, फिर उसके बाद ये अगर आप वेस्ट की बात कर रहे हैं, फिर जो अफ्रीकन अमेरिकन है वो आती हैं बिकॉज दे आर ओनली अमेरिकन. उनका कोई कंट्री नहीं है. दे आर ब्लैक बट दे हैव नो अदर कंट्री टू गो टू. They're not actually African because they don't live in Africa. They don't have an African country. Their roots might go to wherever, you know, Nigeria or wherever else. But the thing is, they're not actually Nigerian in any way. ये तो उसी तरह की बात है कि जिस तरह अब आप कह लें कि कोई Irish American है और कोई फलां का है, but they've lived in America for centuries, so they're American. They're, you know, whatever. So, वो जो power dynamic है, that still exists, and that matters. और वो अभी भी होता है, वो अभी भी फेमिनिज्म में एग्जिस्ट करता है, और वो फिर क्लास हो जाती है, डिसेबिलिटी है, और बहुत सारे एक्सपीरियंसेस हैं, एजुकेशन की बात आ जाती है, पैसा है. I mean, all of it matters. Even to this day, आप ये नहीं कह सकते कि जो अब नहीं होता हो तब नहीं होता, अब तो nobody cares. No, it happens even now, just as much, if not more, because अब mingling ज़्यादा होती है. शायद 1800s में 1900s में इतना mingle नहीं होते थे तो इतना पता नहीं चलता था, but अब mingling बेताशा होती है. Everybody sees everybody is out for work, college, school. It's more noticeable. अब classes इतनी obvious नहीं है, difference इतना obvious नहीं है. So yeah, we have that. So some more key points about intersectional feminism. We did this. So how can we eliminate intersectional feminism? Of course, until we eliminate racism itself. until we recognize all humans in general to be equal, it's not really possible to eliminate this kind of intersectional racism and this kind of diversity, these kinds of problems. Seeking solutions that address the needs of all individuals rather than focusing solely on the needs of a specific group. Questioning the ways in which power and privilege are maintained and perpetuated in society. See, the problem now is that we have more, when it comes to Western feminism, we have more questions than answers. And the questions keep growing. You know, just मैं बात कर रही थी कि we have, you know, groups after subgroups and more questions about, you know, अब इस चीज़ के बारे में क्या होगा, अब इंटरनेट आ गया, अब डिजिटल मीडिया आ गया, अब औरतों को कैसे प्रोटेक्ट करेंगे, अब इस चीज़ को कैसे प्रोटेक्ट करेंगे, अब आगे इसको कैसे लेके जाएंगे. अभी तक we were saying कि औरतों के equal rights, right? अभी तक ये बात हो रही थी. And it makes sense. Women should have all the rights that men do. Women should be protected because they need more protection, because their men are more powerful physically, not mentally, physically, and they harm women. ठीक है ना? तो यहाँ तक बात was clear. Then it got confusing. Why? Because then the question became, what is a woman? Who is a woman? So a question that a Muslim wouldn't ask, or Islam has already cleared for us. It's not a question to be asked. It's not a question. Okay, so there's Farheen is saying, can we say that intersectionality gives them more agency to identify multiple tiers of oppression? Of course, Farheen, definitely. Because they have, the Western society in one way or the other, since its dawn, which is forever, has oppressed people. And that is how it has gained its power, its wealth. That's what capitalism is. It comes about, it has come about through oppression. So, white women cannot be the kind of white women that they are. Sorry to say, if there are any white women, I know that not all of you are the same. They cannot be who they are without oppressing black and brown women. Right? They have the right to the kind of education that a lot of us could never have. They have the right to the kind of jobs that we don't have. If I go with the same qualification in the US and same amount of experience, and a white woman goes for the same kind of job, same kind of experience, let's not compare by a man. Between me and her, she's more likely to get that job. So you see, so they have built on that oppression. So of course, you're absolutely right. So, what was I saying? Right. So the questions keep growing. You see, now we're questioning, what is a woman? Can this person be a woman? Can that person be a woman? Do they have to have ovaries? Do they have to have this body part or that body part? So the confusions keep growing. Right? So unless we're clear what these objects are, or what these people are, and what body parts, and what biologically what they should be, we're not going to have answers. And that's the problem with this Western ideology, or Western solutions is that there's never a solution, because there are so many questions. Because again, कोई solid पकड़ने की जगह नहीं है. There's nothing to bring everything together to be like, oh, this. Obviously, you were talking about oppression. You were talking about capitalism की example. Voting right 1920 में, 1921 में क्यों दिया गया औरतों को? as I said 1700s में बुक तो लिखी थी, उसमें भी लिखी थी. उसके बाद से शुरू हो गई थी एक वेव कि औरतों के लिए राइट्स एंड औरतों के लिए फ्रीडम और औरतों को लिबर्टी टू स्पीक फ्रीली तो उस वक्त दिया जा सकता था, उस वक्त से शुरू हो सकता था. बिकॉज लिबर्टी टू स्पीक फ्रीली में क्या मसला है? व्हाई couldn't they open up to their family members, to their political leaders? What was the problem with that? Why did it take so long? And what changed in 1920 other than the fact that they started marching on the streets and there were riots and whatnot? What changed? What changed was they needed a workforce. And this is proven by history. And you can read historical events. You can read how things progress. They'll say it now. They didn't say it then. You'll read it in history books now. Okay. World War II was at the brinks. They knew कि क्या होने वाला है. ज़ाहिर है 10-15 साल में कुछ होने वाला हो, कोई इनको खतरा हो कि there is a war coming, अंदाज़ा तो हो जाता है ना कि क्या होने वाला है. Hitler was coming into power. Jews तो कब से मसला बने हुए थे यूरोप में इधर से उधर. Everybody wanted to basically just, figure out a way to get rid of them essentially. And they knew something was going to happen. So they knew everybody would have to go to war. Who will run this economy? Who will? Industrial revolution शुरू हो चुकी थी. सारे मर्द चले जाएंगे और most of able-bodied men are going to be out of the countries fighting a war. तो who's going to run these countries? The superpowers. ये तो ठप हो जाएगा सब कुछ. तो औरतों की ये फेमिनिज्म की जो एक वेव है, let it run, let it go. What's going to happen? They're going to go out of the country, out of the house. They're going to work. They're going to get their votes. Right? They're going to vote. They're going to think they're a part of the political system. They're going to think they're getting their liberation. And they're going to go out and they're going to vote and they're going to work because we told them, go work, do what you want. You have your freedom. And what did that do? That didn't give them their freedom. That actually took something away from them. Because they went to work, their husbands were at war, they were working, they're essentially single mothers. They were coming home, they were cooking and cleaning for their kids, and then when their husbands came home, they came home with PTSDs. Severely ill veterans, mentally and physically, many of them. Exactly, the Japanese women started working too because same thing, World War II, everybody was, gone. And they came back either severely ill, mentally or physically, or both, or not able to find any jobs. And then it became, the way things were. And then the idea of the nuclear family, we think it's such a, पुराने ज़माने का आइडिया कि मर्द जो हैं वो बाहर जाके काम करें और औरतें घर में बैठें. This didn't start like अरसे से. It actually started very recently, 40s or 50s में ये होना शुरू हुआ. Because जब मर्द घर वापस आना शुरू हुए 50s और 40s में भी नहीं, 50s and 60s में 60 से करीब होना शुरू हुआ. Because जब हालात ज़रा बेहतर हुए, मर्द वापस आए, वॉर की थोड़ी सी ख़त्म हुई. Kennedy was Reagan के बाद, I think, when Kennedy came in power, that's when it started happening. Because the women were like, okay, you know what, we're kind of done with this business. And even then, women were still, a lot of women were still working. But, that was, post-war era. Women were just kind of like, okay, we don't want to do this. We don't want to. And people just say, what is this, the 50s, the 60s? I don't want to sit home. Women had done their part in the working full-time and taking care of their kids and their husbands and being single moms. And they had done it. And they were just like, nay, this is not working for us anymore. But of course, वो चल पड़ा था, feminism की एक wave चल पड़ी थी. And then it just kept growing and growing. And then the country, the government, fed on it. because then you have double the workforce. Then you have more people working. And that helped, because for the government and for the powers that be, that was working for them. Not to say that if women want to work for their own selves, they can't. Or even for the family, that's fine too. But it helps the economy. You have more bodies out there. You have more taxes pouring in for whatever the hell they need. It wasn't for the sake of feminism. And when you say that to feminists, quote unquote, they don't see it that way. They don't understand it that way. And that is the problem. कि आपको जो reality actually, जो मैंने शुरू में बात कही थी, कि fact and opinion, emotion, they're all different things. Fact is fact. Fact is written down and we know it. अब आपको जो opinion है उसके बारे में कि you don't want to believe it and you think कि that wasn't the reason and you think no, but feminism is women that, because what हम जब मुसलमान ऐसी बात करते हैं ना तो फिर it's like you don't believe in women's right, so you don't believe that women should be able to go out in the world and work, so you don't believe in this, and that it's not about what I believe. I'm just telling you the facts of the matter, right? Right from the advent of Islam, women used to participate in ghazwas. I mean, yeah, that, and we'll get to the Islam, the Islam part of it. Well, women did not fight in ghazwas. Women went with the Prophet. They were medics and they helped in other ways, food and medicine and all of that. But yeah, they went. They went with the army, with the soldiers for sure. And actually, the Prophet's wives, peace be upon him, they were his advisors when they went with him, and they were the ones who, when he couldn't figure out what to do next and how to tackle a certain situation, not just during wartime, but even peacetime, they were the ones he went to for help. Again, for Islamic feminism, we're going to concentrate on two genders. We do believe in intersexual gender, people who have both the genders, but the set of rules and laws and safety requirements for them are completely different. So we're not gonna talk about it here, because that's just going to take the discussion, make it longer, and just take it in different directions. Now, see, Islam doesn't have labels. And that is the most beautiful thing to me about Islam. You're not called a feminist. You're not called, and you can. I mean, if I did call anybody a feminist, I would call the Prophet ﷺ to be the biggest feminist. You know, the rights of women. He advocated the rights of women more than anybody in recent history. Recent meaning recent. Not recent, but you know. So there were no labels. You won't hear Islam having sections and having this group and that group and this way and that way. But yeah, you know, women have rights. All those rights that we talked about and we discussed previously. And but the difference that I think that Islam and Western feminism has, the major difference, is that Islam recognizes the differences between men and women. Islam is not putting men and women as equals. And that's why Farhina made the point of when I said gay women didn't fight in wars, in the ghazwas, because not because, you know, there's something wrong with women fighting in a war, just because they did go and they did do the job that they were supposed to do, or they should have done. Just so to remember that men and women are not put, their jobs are not absolutely equal as far as Islam is concerned, because men and women are different, created differently, right? We are two creatures created differently. Not less important, not less respected, just created differently. And people give like apple and oranges example, and I don't like that example, because when you give that example, then the person you're giving that example to, for instance, अगर आप मुझे कहेंगे कि ये तो ये एप्पल और ऑरेंजेस वाला डिफरेंस है कि ये डिफरेंट है लेकिन कोई अच्छा और बुरा नहीं है, लेकिन अगर मुझे ऑरेंजेस ज़्यादा पसंद है तो फिर मेरे लिए तो अच्छा बुरा का बात होगी ना, कि मुझे ऑरेंजेस ज़्यादा पसंद है, एप्पल्स नहीं पसंद है, तो फिर मैं एप्पल्स को लिफ्ट नहीं कराऊंगी, राइट? सो दैट्स नॉट इट. मेरे पास मुझे ये हक नहीं है कि मैं किसी एक को ज़्यादा इज्जत दूँ और किसी एक को कम इज्जत दूँ. सो अल्लाह ने दो क्रीचर्स बनाए, एक मर्द और एक औरत, और अल्लाह ने कहा है कि ये मैंने डिफरेंट तरीके से बनाए, इन दोनों को डिफरेंट तरीके से हैंडल करो, डिफरेंट तरीके से इनकी इज्जत करो, डिफरेंट तरीके से इनके साथ काम करो, लेकिन ये दोनों बिल्कुल एक से हैं. इनकी नीड्स डिफरेंट हैं, इनको मैंने भेजा, काम इनको डिफरेंट दिए हैं, दुनिया में इनसे डिफरेंट काम करवाने, इनके अचीवमेंट्स डिफरेंट होंगी, लेकिन ये एक दूसरे के बराबर हैं, कोई किसी के नीचे नहीं है, कोई किसी के ऊपर नहीं है. आई होप दैट्स क्लियर. सो दैट इज द डिफरेंट. द एम ऑफ फेमिनिज्म, the mainstream feminism, Western feminism, has always been women are equal to men. Women can do everything that men can do. And that is an extremely stressful thing to put on the women's shoulders, because we are not the same as men. We look different, we talk different, we think differently, everything about us is different. So when we have that pressure, it's, we can't, I don't want to say live up to it, because there's nothing to live up to. They're not better than us, they're just different from us. So it's impossible to be that. However, we are different from them, and to be ourselves is super easy. So that's what Islam says. We are different. Men are different, we are different, and we complement each other. Right? So we do our job, they do their jobs. And what are the jobs? That is to be understood through the Quran and through the Sunnah of the Prophet. And again, we like to put ourselves in boxes, the boxes that are women should sit at home and men need to go out and earn. Well, men do need to earn, but only women are only responsible for the house and the kids and all of that. Those are stereotypes, and that is what we'll talk about. That is what needs to be cleared in the sense of what Islam says about all of those things. So to remember that Islam does not say that we are equal in any way. No. Islam does say we're equal, but Islam does not say that we are the same. We're not the same. That is why you will see again and again, जब भी आप कुरान में पढ़ेंगे आयत में जहाँ पे different बातों का हुक्म दिया जा रहा है, वहाँ पे it says, O believing men, and then O believing women. अलग अलग, because we're not the same. It doesn't just say, Ya ayyuhal mu'mineen. Maybe once or twice it does, but not always. Okay, all believers, right? Because it's not talking to the same type of people. If we were just equal, exactly the same to each other, then Allah would just say, oh, believers, and that's it. No, He calls men and women separately, because we are different. But never does He say men are better than you. Oh, yeah, and we do take that men are your protectors thing very, very, in all sorts of weird ways. And now, the word qawam, we take it as we do in Urdu, which means they're your, all sorts of weird, rulers or whatnot, right? But in Arabic, it does not mean that. It just means that they are your protectors. Again, we're built differently, right? Men are physically stronger. I mean, we want to deny it, we can deny it. But most men, you'll find a lot of women who are stronger than men, but physically, it is a known fact, scientifically known. It's not something that I'm saying because I want to prove some kind of stuff to you. Why would I want to prove that? I would love to prove to you that women are stronger, right? And Allah has made them our protectors. You keep your family safe. You keep your women safe. You keep your kids safe. That is your responsibility. And again, I would emphasize that it's not just in terms of physical safety. They're supposed to protect us from harm in general, keep us in a place, give us a home where we're protected. We're protected from not just the physical evil, but the other kind of evil, people who might harm us, situations that might harm us. So just general protection. That is what men are supposed to, provide us, and that is what Allah's put on them. So we all have roles to play, and that is one of the roles that men have to play. And I mean, we should probably do one on relationships, and we will talk about relationships a little bit more, and we can maybe go into then that men have to, the kind of culture even Islam promotes is a kind of where, we have a family system in any kind of culture, and Islamic culture is also close to your family. So when a man is navigating his, married family and his mother, his parents and brothers and sisters and all of that, he has to be the protector for all of them. So he has to draw those boundaries where he doesn't hurt his wife and his kids, and he doesn't hurt his parents and whoever else, his siblings or whoever he's close to. So he's a protector in that way too. So those are the kind of things that, for the reason that Allah has made him the protector, only he can do that. The wife can't communicate with the sas and say, let me be the protector for my husband and for my sas. She has to step back, and the husband has to say कि अच्छा मैं तुम ठहरो, मैं अम्मी को समझा के आता हूँ, या अम्मी से कहे अच्छा नहीं आप इसको बस छोड़ दें, और बीवी को समझाए कि छोड़ दो यार, अम्मी को मैं समझा दूँगा. अच्छा, whatever the situation he has to do, it has to be him to take charge, which is the opposite of what happens in our culture, at least. So the protector word kavam, or whatever the word is, has a lot of different meaning, but that does not mean जो हम इसकी meaning लेते हैं. और अगर मर्द इसकी ये meaning लेते हैं, तो that's also wrong. And we talked about that कि जो second, third marriage की बात होती है, उसमें भी it's completely taken out of context, including this one. बहुत सारी आयत और हदीस हैं जिसका बिल्कुल out of context meaning ली जाती है. All right, back to topic. Sorry, I got away from me there, but I think it was relevant. Okay. So again, coming back to this, see, this is our focus, that we can come back to this. This is never changing. This is never, no matter how much the culture changes, no matter how much situations change, time changes, this is going to be the same. We can always come back to this, and this will stay the same. So first thing we talked about back there was right to vote. From the moment the state of Medina, we'll start there, and we could start from before that, but let's start here. From the day the start of Medina, the state of Medina was built, women had the right to vote. There didn't have to be any riots, no suffrage, nobody had to go to the Prophet and say, we also need to have the right to vote, and there are no policies in regards to women and our reproductive rights and this and this. No, because women already had it. As the Quran was coming down, women had all of those rights. Nobody was questioning. There was slavery, but when slaves were being free, men and women were being free equally. There was no difference in the price, because वो तो non-believers और मुशरिकीन थे ना मक्का के, जिनके पास slaves थे, तो जब उनको तो पैसे दे के फ्री करवाना होता था. जब उनको पैसे दिए जाते थे तो कोई डिफरेंस नहीं था कि मर्दों का कितना दिया जा रहा है औरतों का कितना दिया जा रहा है. अगर मुशरिकीन और काफिरीन वो ज़्यादा मांगते थे कि हम मर्दों के ज़्यादा देंगे औरतों के कम होंगे, तो दैट वाज अ डिफरेंट थिंग, बिकॉज़ द प्रॉफेट सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम हैड सेड कि उनको बस दो जितने भी वो मांगते हैं और उनसे छुड़वा लो उनको. जो मुसलमान स्लेव्स बहुत मुसलमान हो रहे थे उस ज़माने में, उनको छुड़वा लो. बट फॉर एज फार एज द मुस्लिम्स वर कंसर्न देयर वाज नो डिफरेंस कि अच्छा हम औरतों के ज़्यादा नहीं देंगे और मर्दों के ज़्यादा देंगे. सो देयर वाज नो डिफरेंस इन दैट. पॉइंट बीइंग कि women were not treated differently in that way. Right to own property. Women have always had the right to own property. There was never you know, as soon as the state of Medina started, women could own property. So that was never a problem. Inheritance, of course, women can, I have the details here, where it is. Yeah, women can have 1/4, but then we have to remember that they can have their fathers from their father's side and from their husband, and then they can work and they can save up and they don't have to give whatever their work they receive from work, apni job jo hai, they don't have to put it towards their kids and towards their household and their husband. So that's completely also their own. And I know this is a mess, especially in our country, and all Muslim countries में भी ये होता है कि औरतों को नहीं मिलता है उनकी inheritance, and that has nothing to do with Islam. That has to do with our culture, our people, our rule of law. तो अगर औरतों को जो उनके rightfully inheritance है बाप की तरफ से, मियाँ की तरफ से, और फिर जो अपनी जॉब्स कर रही हैं, जो अपनी प्रॉपर्टी उनको वैसे उनके पास प्रॉपर्टी है, पैसे जमा करके ले ली है या जॉब से ले ली है या जॉब से जो पैसे जमा कर रही हैं, जिस तरह से भी वो सब मिल जाए तो we won't lack anything. But yeah, that doesn't happen. I understand that. And I know कि inheritance का culturally बहुत problems हैं, but Islamically it's not, it wouldn't be a problem if you're taken care of by your parents, father, men of your own house, and then when you get married you're taken care of by your husband. आपको महर मिल जाए, आपको आपकी inheritance proper तरीके से मिल जाए, तो you won't have any issues. And that is the whole point कि मर्दों को घर चलाना है, मर्दों को अपने पेरेंट्स की भी टेक केयर करनी है, अपने घर वालों की भी टेक केयर करनी है अपनी. और अगर आपके मर्दों के लिए अगर आपके घर में आप चचा या मामू हैं, आपके कोई खुदा ना खास्ता कोई डेथ होती है, तो वो बच्चे वो सब वो यतीम जो वो भी आपकी जिम्मेदारी है. औरतों पे तो ऐसी कोई जिम्मेदारी भी नहीं है. द थिंग इज़ हमारे कल्चर में होती है, हमारे कल्चर में हमेशा औरतों पे पड़ती है कि अगर आपकी कोई खुदा न खास्ता बहन की डेथ हो गई, कोई भाई की डेथ हो गई, किसी और की, तो वो औरतों की जिम्मेदारी है कि अपने भांजे भतीजियों की, अपने बहन की और जिसकी भी पेरेंट्स की औरतें टेक केयर करती हैं. दे डोंट आस्क देयर हस्बैंड. सो वी आर ऑलवेज पुअर बिकॉज ऑफ दैट रीज़न. हालांकि इस्लामिकली इट शुड बी द मैन्स जॉब टू टेक केयर ऑफ ऑल दोस थिंग्स. तो अगर हमें ये सब ना करना हो तो we would not be at a loss for money. So again, these things are not an Islamic issue. These things are more of a cultural issue. और हम डाल इसको इस्लाम पे देते हैं, of course, लेकिन ये इस्लाम का इशू नहीं है. अगर मर्द अपनी जॉब कर रहे हो प्रॉपरली, अगर मर्द कवाम बन रहे हो, तो फिर ये प्रॉब्लम ना हो. So we'll do the own their sexuality, relationship, body autonomy altogether, and clothing as well. This will all fit in, and you'll see. I want to go in a proper order. Freedom of speech. Again, freedom of speech is pretty much the same thing. And I want to tell you something really interesting about freedom of speech. A sahabiya came to the Prophet ﷺ, and she, it's a detailed hadith, I'm just going to shorten it. She came to the Prophet, Sahih Bukhari, yeah, and she said that she had been divorced already. She said that I've divorced my previous husband and I want to get married again. And the Prophet asked her, she came in the Masjid Nabi. The Prophet asked her, why did you divorce him? She told him why she divorced him. And then he said, okay, you want to get married again? She's like, yeah, I want to get married again. And then he said, do you have anybody in mind? She told him who she wanted to get married to. He said, okay, I'll ask him, and I'll ask the Sahabi that you want to get married to, and I'll get back to you. At that moment, when she was talking to him, there were other Sahabis who were sitting in the masjid, and there was another one standing at the door of the masjid. And so he looks at the other Sahabi and he says, look at how boldly she's speaking to the Prophet in front of all of us. And the Prophet just smiled, and she turned around and walked away. So this was, freedom of speech. And I know it's a very small example, but this wasn't a problem. This wasn't a thing where people couldn't speak up in front of the Prophet, or you couldn't speak your mind about things that were happening around you. There wasn't any kind of boundaries on who said what at that time. So, and then and we're talking in terms of women, right? We're talking in terms of bounding women on them opening up about their freedoms and about what they want to express, how they want to express themselves. Hazrat Umar used to say that there was a point where we were afraid to talk to our wives, because we were afraid that they would tell on us, like they would tell the Prophet, and then we would be reprimanded. Like the Prophet would tell us to be good to our wives, because of course these men were coming from the time of Jahiliyyah, when they were Muslim, and they were, the women were treated very harshly, very badly. And so they became Muslim. They were told to treat women with respect, their wives and mothers and daughters and whatnot. So they became Muslim. They had to change, and then anytime they would be harsh or fight with their wives, the wives would go and complain to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet would of course call the husbands and give them a lecture about being kind to their wives. So it became to the point where they were afraid to even talk to their wives, because they knew that they would just go run to the Prophet and tell on them. So that was the extent of the freedom that the women had. They were actually more free to express themselves than at some point the men were, because they didn't want to, in any way oppress the women or their freedoms or their rights. So, and again, there's so much more detail here that we could go into, but time just, and I'm thinking we'll pick subtopics from here, the ones that seem interesting, and if you guys have some recommendation, we can welcome to give me some. Now, let's go to owning sexuality, body autonomy, clothing, and all those things. Let's quick look at that, and then we'll go to relationships. Now, are we denying when we say that women can wear whatever they want? And why can, these are the questions that feminists today ask, right? Why, first of all, we do it, we cover ourselves. Men have their kind of hijab. Women have their kind of hijab. Men are supposed to also cover a certain part of their body. They cannot just walk out without any clothes, as far as Islam is concerned, right? We're not concerned about what the world is doing, because the world is doing a lot of crazy things. Okay? And women have their own. Now, the biggest problem that everybody has with this general world, with our religion, again, Allah is asking us to do this, so we do it. But the biggest problem, even a lot of us have with this, is why do we have to put it on our heads? And men don't have to. And again, it's going to go back to that basic question. Men and women are different. We are not less respectable. It's not that men are more respectable or women are more respectable. We're both very respectable creatures. We are both ashraful makhlukat, dono, mard aur aurtein, but we are different. women are more attractive. We're just prettier. So we're asked to dress a certain way. That's the acceptance. मर्दों को नहीं करना पड़ता तो okay. मर्दों को और तरीके से हिजाब करना होता है, हमें बिल्कुल डिफरेंट तरीके से हिजाब करना होता है, and that's that. I mean, why are we bringing up more questions when there don't need to be? मर्दों की strengths different है, हमारी strengths different है. Do you know that women have, you know how there's two parts to our brain, right? So women are able to connect those two parts and make stronger arguments and understand things on a different level than men can. You know how we say that men can't multitask, and it's like a whole thing, and we just kind of say it, but it's actually true. Our brains are designed to multitask and understand things on a different emotional level that men cannot. Men are designed to focus on one thing and do that very well. And some men can multitask, I'm sure, but scientifically, this is a scientific research, and if you want, I can go back and look at my notes for some other lectures I've given and show you that there is scientific research. Even infants say ये चीज़, male and female infant को इन्होंने study किया, and they kept studying it until it was like 12, 13, they were both 12, 13 years old. कि male infant दोनों hemispheres separately काम कर रहे हैं, ठीक है, and the boy was able to concentrate on separate things very well. Multitasking की ability was very less, and when he was told to multitask, his work ability got very, very, so कहते हैं कम हो गई. The girl was able to multitask and connect information and then come up with a resolution or solution or understanding of the situation and make a scenario that would be helpful or that would get to a very good conclusion very fast that the boy could not. But he had his own strengths, the kind of focus that he had, the kind of work that he could do. In the amount of time she couldn't, because she had so much going on, and her attentiveness and her understanding of the world was way better than his, but his timing was way better. So I mean, everybody has their own strengths. So different but equal. That's the thing. So if we have to dress a certain way, why does it have to be bad only because it's not the same as the men? Right? That's the problem, right? Same goes for sexuality. We are sexual beings, and nowhere in the Quran or in the Hadith has this been negated. We've not been told don't be sexual beings. Actually, it has been encouraged for us to be sexual beings. We have been told that you are sexual beings. You do need a partner. You have to. You should have a partner. Right? And there are many, many examples on where the Prophet encouraged his sahabas and sahabiyats to get married, and they've come to him saying themselves, we want to get married. There's never been anything that stopped people from wanting to get married. The Prophet ﷺ just saying, oh, Sakfara, how dare you want to get married? How dare you want to have sex? They've discussed their sex problems with the Prophet ﷺ. It's never been an issue. So I don't know why we think that just because Allah has asked us to keep our private parts private, it means that our sexuality is being suppressed. That's just all that there is. Just keep it private. That's all. It's just really that simple. And, we can discuss it more, but right now we don't have the time. relationships. This is actually something I want to talk about. We, please let me know if there's any confusion or anything you guys don't understand. I know the time is, I've exceeded my time, but this is, I can't. This is my favorite part. Alright, so you know how everybody says relationships should be 50-50? Bogus. How is that possible? How can you be 50-50 in anything? When you live with somebody, you'll know there's no such thing as 50-50. You have to compromise, and that's just a fact. So we talked about the kalam thing. You have to go the extra mile, otherwise you cannot have a relationship with anyone. And that is what we're taught in Islam. When you talk about, just feminism, I'm so sorry, I'm just kind of getting tired now. This is going to be, let me just fix my position. So when we talk about feminism, the Western type of feminism, it has to be 50-50. Otherwise you're not living in a feminist household. But how would it be 50-50? When there's two people with completely different mindsets, completely different lifestyles, have grown up in different communities, have grown up in with different types of people, different types of friends, different types of ideas about life and marriage, and you want them to do everything 50-50? Does that sound practical? No, it's not possible. You have to go the extra mile. You have to compromise. You have to give and take. You have to be, angry sometimes. You have to dislike things sometimes. And sometimes you have to give a little. Give and take. That's how relationships work. That's how marriages work. And that is why so many of the marriages in the West are not working. And that is why our marriages are, Muslim marriages all over the world are breaking up, because we're going on the whole feminist 50-50 thing, and it doesn't work that way. It will not work unless you're ready to compromise. You go in thinking, well, if I'm doing this, then he has to do this. If I'm doing this, then he has to do this in return. And that's not going to work, because you cannot expect your husband, your wife, either one, to do something because you're doing it for them. There shouldn't be any in return. It should be because you love the person and you care about them. Whether it's for you directly or for somebody in your family. You do things for each other and for each other's family, each other's friends, because you love each other. It should be just that simple. And if you're not ready to go that extra mile, then you don't really love that person. You have to make it that simple. And if you are becoming rigid about that, oh no, I'm not going to take care of his guests, or I'm not going to cook for his mother and his sister because that's not my responsibility, then you're not seeing, and Islamically it's right, that's not your responsibility. But if you're not seeing the fact that he's extremely close to his mother and sister, and they're just here to visit for a week, and it would make him super happy, if you don't see that, then that's not love, and that's not commitment to a person. Don't start a problem before it becomes a problem. So that's the difference between Western feminism and Islamic feminism, because we already have, and this, what I said about the cooking and whatever, it goes both ways. It goes for the guy too, that if your wife's parents come to stay, or sister or cousin or friend or whoever it may be, then you give, you cook, you clean, because why not? If you love her, you'll do for her family just as much as she would do for your family, because that's how it works. If you're not ready to give for her family, then you don't have the sense of commitment that you probably told her that you do. Right? Because it doesn't work in that way. It doesn't work if you're just saying, oh, my commitment, my love stops at you. Because you have to love the people that they love, or at least try to, or at least take care of, or the things that they love, or the, situations or the stuff that they're into. And that's what Islam demands, because that is, ihsan has to be a part of a marriage or any relationship. Ihsan just means to be kind, to go out of your way, to compromise. And any relationship, including marriage, does not work if you don't have ihsan in that marriage. And so I want to say something about marriage. This idea of arranged marriages, we've really confused that with our style of crazy marriages, I would say. So arranged marriages versus love marriage, and that's what we say. Oh, arranged marriages in our culture and the Islamic arranged marriages. No, I just want to, let me just see if I've gotten everything else. Okay, yeah. So here's what I want to clarify. There is no such thing as arranged marriage versus love marriage. In Islam, there's just only one kind of marriage, which is both the parents and the boy or girl, the girl's consent, like together, and that's it. So we're talking about an Islamic society, right? We're talking about Islamic feminism, so Islamic society. And I gave you an example of how the woman who divorced her first husband came to the Prophet and said, I'm interested in this guy. And the Prophet said, okay, I'll talk to him and I'll let you know. This is the kind of society I'm talking about. Okay? So here's what happens in this society. In this society, you don't have restrictions where you can't talk to this boy or that boy, or can't go here, you can't go there. This is an Islamic society that we should be living in, right? Everybody's doing their part properly. Girl gets a proposal or a boy gets a proposal, because boys getting a proposal is not, again, I'm going to go back to that same example. The girl basically proposed because she didn't know anybody else in the boy's family, that man's family. She went to the Prophet to give the proposal to the man, right? So either way, it's quite progressive for that time. You would say for that time, but I would say that was just a normal thing that happened. It didn't happen in the time of Jahiliyyah, because those guys didn't even consider women to be complete. They were property, so they couldn't go proposing it to people. They were just sold back and forth. So the woman or the man shows their interest, goes to the parents or to the girl directly, however, and girl or boy directly, and then they say, okay, I'll consult my parents, or I'll consult, the individual, and then the family of the girl or the boy talk to each other, and then they respond, yes or no, and that's it. Now, the way we do things right now, जो हमारा एक तरीका है कि अच्छा हम लड़के को बात करने देते हैं कुछ अर्से, नहीं तुमने यहाँ नहीं करनी, वो तो उसने तुमसे कैसे पूछ लिया, हाउ डेयर ही, नहीं हम खुद बात करेंगे, और नहीं उससे नहीं करना, और तुम उसको पहले से कैसे जानती हो, और ये क्या है. ये सब चीज़ें इस्लामिक कल्चर में नहीं होती, और वी हैवंट सीन प्रॉपर इस्लामिक कल्चर, लेकिन अगर इस्लामिक कल्चर है तो उसमें नहीं होंगी. व्हाई नॉट? हमारे जहन में जो इस्लामिक कल्चर है उसमें तो मर्द औरतें बिल्कुल अलग हैं, एक दूसरे से बात नहीं करते, एक दूसरे के करीब नहीं आते हैं. वेल यू सी, ऐसा नहीं होता है. बिकॉज आपको मैं एग्जांपल प्रॉफेट सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की लाइफ से ही देती हूँ. एक तो आपने ये देखा कि वो जो आपको हदीस की दी, हज़रत फातिमा रज़ियल्लाहु अन्हा की एग्जांपल है, अभी हम उनकी बात आगे करेंगे. उनकी जिस तरह से हज़रत अली से शादी हुई थी, राइट? हज़रत अली के फादर जो हैं अबू तालिब, ही डाइड इन मक्का, राइट? तो हज़रत अली रज़ियल्लाहु अन्हु कज़न थे प्रॉफेट सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के. ही was practically living with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hazrat Fatima was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's youngest daughter. She was also in the house. Now they were in the same house, in the same environment. Of course she did hijab. Of course she was not with him all the time, but they knew each other. They spoke to each other. And then time came later on when he was ready to get married. He went to the Prophet. We'll talk about it in detail. He asked the Prophet. Prophet asked Hazrat Fatima. She approved, and they got married. They already knew each other. It wasn't that he asked her, and she said, oh, because the Prophet said so. Of course she respected her father's wishes, but because she approved of him, because she knew him. Right? So this is how it happens. In a society, you know a person, you're hanging out around them, but she did hijab, she did bakka, covered herself completely, but they spoke to each other. Right? She was an educated woman. She was into politics. She was into, she cared about justice. She was a very, very passionate woman, like passionate about her work, about the things she did. And Hazrat Ali was involved in the community. Hazrat Ali was involved with all sorts of work that the Prophet did. So I'm sure they spoke to each other. I'm sure they crossed paths. And I'm sure at home they spoke to each other. And that's how you get to know people. जो हमने बनाया हुआ है ना कि या तो बिल्कुल ही do whatever you want, the other side, या बिल्कुल ये कि नहीं लड़कियों घर में बिठा के रखो, किसी दुनिया के किसी मर्द से बात ही नहीं करेगी. You do normal activities. You go out, you work, you go to school, you do normal, everyday activities, and you get introduced to people. And that person has the right to go to your parents and say, I know your daughter from here and here. Not that I've ever gone on a date with her, or this doesn't have to happen in that way. And you trust your daughter, you trust your son, you trust the process. इसका मतलब ये नहीं है. अब हज़रत अली ने जब Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam से जाके पूछा, तो the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was absolutely sure that they didn't have, na'udzubillah, any kind of situation. Hazrat Ali knew her character. Hazrat Ali knew she was a wonderful woman. She was the Prophet's daughter. What else did he need to know? And he probably also understood that they were compatible. So that's that. And the Prophet said, okay, I'll go ask her. And when she said okay, the Prophet understood that, okay, she knows him. They've been together. They've been living in the same house. They've interacted with each other. So yeah, they know each other. Okay, good. This is how things happen. Now we have to force them. Now we have to force our children to meet each other in random places and get to know each other in random places. If we put all of them in an Islamic situation where they're all decently clothed and interacting with each other in a normal environment, getting to know each other at workplaces, at schools and universities, and then deciding, this person is decent enough. They're, and then within their limits, of course. And then they're deciding, or we see their parents and we say, the family looks good and you seem to be comfortable with this person. What do you think? Or they come to us and say, look, I feel like this is a good person for me. Should I go ahead and ask their parents or ask them? This is how an Islamic society works. And whether you want to call it a love marriage or arranged marriage, I feel like it's a combination of that. And I don't feel there's any. I feel like the separation and ये जो खींच ना होता है कि we love marriage है और ये arranged marriage है और मेरे parents ने कर दी और फलां ने कर दी, all of this happens जब आप Islamic system से mess करते हैं. तो Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam खदीजा उनकी शादी कैसे हुई थी? ऐसी तो हुई थी. They worked together. They knew each other as, employee and employer. And then she saw him. She discussed it with her brother. She said he's a very good employer. He's good looking. I like the way he looks, and he's never been Hamesha he's been very sharif with me. He's never approached me in any other way, or I feel like I want to propose. And then she proposed to him with her brother. Like, it was a completely completely normal way. Now, you want to call it love marriage or arranged marriage? What do you want to call it? Because she liked him. She told her brother. She proposed with her brother there. And then he thought about it, and he took his mother, the person who took his nanny, the person who took care of him. He took her, so he took not Hazrat Halima, but there was another person who used to take care of him. She was a slave, but then when he became Muslim, he freed her, but he took her with him. So what do we call that? So you see, we have started to muddle these things because we are giving it different kinds of names, because we are not living in a true Muslim society where it's not that you're not allowed to interact with the opposite sex, but we either complete freedom to go do whatever, or we just completely, like I said, pull them apart and no contact. And then when they do get a chance to get in contact, they don't know the rules. Because we don't know the rules. Because we haven't read the Quran, we haven't read the Sunnah of the Prophet. We don't know how things work in an Islamic environment. We just know, keep the women locked up, put like 4 layers on them, and they can't see anybody, they can't talk to anybody. Where we don't know how these women interacted with the world. They were out there in the world. They weren't bottled up. That wasn't the purpose. And that isn't the purpose in Islam for women. If you want to use the word feminist, then the reason women are created and the reason women are here is to make a difference. Because why would Allah create another type of people, मर्दों के अलावा, और उनको कहेगा कमरे में बंद होके बैठ जाओ? What's the purpose? Think about that. Why? Hazrat Hawa was the first first woman on earth. क्या purpose था Hazrat Hawa का? हम ये समझते हैं कि हज़रत हवा का पर्पस ये था कि बस हज़रत आदम को just to please him, for his pleasure, right? Mainly physical, sexual pleasure. Now, जब हज़रत हवा का जिक्र होता है कुरान में, तो उसी वक्त में ये भी जिक्र होता है कि तुम दोनों एक दूसरे के लिए लिबास हो. और लिबास का काम क्या होता है? To comfort each other, to comfort, to protect, to keep warm. So Allah wanted them to keep. Hazrat Adam alayhi salam needed companionship. He was getting lonely. So Allah created a companion. Alright, so thank you for joining, all of you. This is actually kind of the end, but please go back and listen to it because I feel like this was a good one. Yeah, so it was for companionship, right? So it wasn't just for that. And also because he was about to go down to Earth. And you think he would have survived Earth alone? Absolutely not. Because his personality was a tiny bit impulsive. She was the grounding factor for him. He was a very knowledgeable and wise man. But she was the grounding factor for him. So Surah Al-Araf, Ayah 89, it says that Allah created her so that he might find rest in her. So she was a safe place. She was, like I said, a grounding factor. She was the place. She was the one who gave him advice on things. She was the one who basically helped him survive on over there and in Jannah, but then on Earth. When he was sent to Earth and he didn't know what to do, and he was so feeling so guilty and so bad about what he had said and what he had done, it was Hazrat Hawa who told him, how about you ask him to forgive you? How about you ask Allah? And he's like, I don't know how to. He's like, well, ask Allah. Ask him how to ask him to forgive you. So she was there for him. She was there to help him through all of this. So these women have always been women. A woman was not, she was not created to just be there for his pleasure. She was created to balance him out, because he would not have been able to do all of the things. Allah could have just created one woman, one man, or two men, one a little bit, doing all the things that Hazrat Adam was doing, and another one doing what Hazrat Hawa was doing, but a man. But Allah needed another woman, us, with our specifications, to do this job. Someone who's strong enough emotionally, physically, but emotionally, to handle the kind of things that need to be handled in this world. And can you imagine what she had to handle? She had to make the first home. And just, don't think of it as a story. This is real. She had to make the first home. She had to, now again, we're going to go back to that whole thing, staying at home and cooking and cleaning and the man going out to work, blah, blah, all of that. No, that didn't exist. They were both going out hunting and gathering. They were both coming home and making the meal. They were both taking care of the kids. There was no concept of who's doing what. So these ways of living, we have created them. Who stays at home? Who goes out and work? Who does this? Who does that? We have created them. And our focus should be compromising on jobs. And we know that man's job is to bring in the money. This is not the focus of a woman's part of women's responsibilities. Everything else you distribute however you want. It will never be 50-50, but you distribute it however you want within your capabilities and within the responsibilities that Allah has made fard on you. Other than that, there's no, oh, this is not the 50s, we can't live like this. It happened in the 1600s, now it doesn't happen. There's no such thing as that. Allah's giving you the Quran. Look at what you should and should not do, what is fard, what is not fard, and then you decide. Don't fall into the whole, but as a feminist I can't do that. But what are you allowed to do as a Muslim? Because Hazrat Hawa was not sitting at home with the kids. No, she was not. She was literally building her home with like with her hands, physically. So we need to just open our minds a little bit, get out of this mindset. And this is oppression and that's oppression. If you're doing it happily, it's not oppression. If somebody's forcing you, then think about it and redo your life. इन सब बातों में ज़रा सा थोड़ा सा ना दिमाग खोल के सोचने की बात होती है. हम अटक जाते हैं इस बॉक्स में जो वेस्ट ने हमारे लिए बना दिया. कुरान एंड हिस्ट्री, हमारी हिस्ट्री, वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री, जो कि वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री है, सिर्फ हमारी हिस्ट्री नहीं है. आदम एंड हवा Islamic history, लेकिन world history. The world started with them, right? So your world history. Open the box up. Look around. कि हम इसको इतना छोटा कर देते हैं कि it's bigger than that. Look at how people lived. Everybody lived. And then, examples तो बहुत हैं, but Hazrat Maryam रज़ियल्लाहु अन्हा, उनकी life को देख लो. She was a single mother. She had a son. अब आप इसको फैक्चुअल उसमें देखें ना. अब जैसे I've been saying it throughout कि एक फैक्ट होता है, एक अपने ओपिनियन होता है, फिर इमोशंस होते हैं. इमोशंस को, ओपिनियन को साइड पे रख के, शी हैड अ सन without being married, और ये किसी भी कल्चर में, किसी भी टाइम पीरियड में, it's never been accepted. ये तो हमें अच्छी तरह पता है. She was never married. She had a baby as a virgin, but we know she was a virgin. The world at that time didn't. ठीक है ना? Her parents knew, she knew, Muslims of that time knew, but the world around her, where she lived, उनके आसपास के, they didn't know. They didn't think that she was a virgin. उस टाइम पे बच्चा होना, प्रेग्नेंट रहना, उस प्रेगनेंसी को संभालना, फिर हज़रत ईसा अलैहिस्सलाम की बर्थ, And we know it was a difficult birth because she was kicked out of her town. She had to go somewhere completely alone, have the baby. And हमें पता है ये बात कि she raised him by herself. I mean, her parents were there, but she was essentially a single mother because उनके parents were very old. तो आप मुझे बताएं कि हम इस बात को ऐसे नहीं सोचते. Oh, Hazrat Maryam, Hazrat Isa, you know, wonderful person, Hazrat Maryam and Hazrat Isa's mom, and हम इस तरह नहीं सोचते कि she was a single mother. उनके पर कितना डिफिकल्ट टाइम आया होगा. अभी सिंगल मदर्स जो अपने हस्बैंड से सेपरेटेड हैं, डिवोर्स्ड हैं, या उनके हस्बैंड की डेथ हो गई है, उनकी ज़िंदगी अजाब होती है पाकिस्तान में, मुस्लिम कल्चर्स में. कैन यू इमेजिन a mother who people think had a baby out of wedlock, living in a society where it's not acceptable? Can you imagine her life? Even if her parents believe her and they're on her side and they understand that this baby came from Allah. And the baby spoke as a child. Does not, for Muslims, okay, yeah. But for the larger society, it does not matter. Can you imagine the kind of suffering, the kind of struggle mentally and physically that must have been for her? So we don't see what these women had, what kind of role models we have in the women of Islam. But she did it. She took care of him. She took care of whatever household that she had. She made the money. She did everything. I mean, how else would she survive? She did it, right? She did it all on her own. I mean, he spoke as a child just once, but other than that, she was a normal kid. Hazrat Isa al-Islam spoke once as a child, but other than that, he was a normal kid, right? He did all the kid stuff, and she had to take care of it. She had to raise him, with all the struggles. And we spoke about Hazrat Khadija, and their marriage proposal was the way it was, and it was beautiful, and other than that, Khadija was a very, very strong woman. And after she became, Islam came, and she was the Prophet ﷺ's biggest supporter. She was the first one to accept Islam, the first one to say, if you say it, then it's true. And if you're saying that there was an angel that came to you, then it must be an angel. She believed him without a doubt. And she was the first one to support him, to put all her money into it, to put all her effort into it, to just be by his side. And she was a great help to him. She was her own woman. She was extremely rich, and she devoted all of that to the cause of Islam. And I think she was actually the first woman to learn the information from the Prophet and pass it on to other women. She was the first teacher. And then Hazrat Fatima, her daughter, was going to become the next woman, one of the women who would become the teacher and advocate. Like I said, she was very political, Hazrat Fatima, and worked for justice. So that was given to her, of course, by the Prophet ﷺ and by Hazrat Khadija, to struggle for justice, to really work for people who, striving for justice. And that Hazrat Fatima got that from her mother, from seeing the struggles of her mother, from seeing the Prophet ﷺ, and also witnessing their death, like her mother's death, and then the Prophet ﷺ's chacha's death. Chacha's death. Hazrat Ali's father's death. They were both died in Makkah when they were जब वो उसमें उनको शेब बी तालब में उनको बंद किया हुआ था, वो भी वहाँ पर थी हज़रत फातिमा रज़ियल्लाहु अन्हा और उनके हज़रत खदीजा और वो उनके चचा दोनों की, they both passed while they were there. So that injustice, that's what drew her to work for political equality, for justice, to take care of people, to better the world. And she fought for it. She lived through it. she lived her life in that manner, and that is how she raised her kids, Hassan, Hussein, and Zainab radiallahu anha. That was the spirit that they had. So you see, Allah, that is what Allah's created the women for. We have a purpose. As women, we have a purpose. You fight for things, and then you instill that spirit in your kids. And that is not to say you sit at home and you just train the kids. You know why that we can't do that? Because kids don't always listen to what you're telling them. बच्चों को सिखाने के लिए आपको करना भी पड़ता है. मॉडलिंग, बच्चे ज़्यादा मॉडलिंग से सीखते हैं. आप उनको सबक पढ़ाते रहेंगे, लेकिन अगर आप खुद वो काम नहीं कर रहे ना, तो बच्चे नहीं सीखेंगे. बच्चे मदर्स से ज़्यादा लर्न करते हैं, बिकॉज मदर्स से हर वक्त का वो होता है, राइट? बट अगर आप भी वो काम नहीं कर रहे हैं, तो फिर उनको आप तो सारा दिन घर बैठी रहती हैं फालतू में, और हमें कह रही हैं कि बाहर जाके ये काम भी करो, वो काम भी करो, राइट? तो आप बच्चों को लेकर जाएं. इफ़ यू वांट टू डू, you want to work, you want to, whatever you want to achieve, and you want your kids to achieve something, then you have to be out there doing that with your kids or without your kids, but you have to be involved in that. So that's what has to happen. Hazrat Khadija was involved with all the religious work. She was working full time. She didn't stop working until her death, and until she was where she ended up towards the very end. She didn't stop working. Her kids were with her. They saw her. वहीं से लर्न किया ना हज़रत फ़ातिमा रज़ियल्लाहु अन्हा ने. अपनी मदर को देखा एंड तक इस्लाम के लिए. She was fighting. She learned from there, and then she became a fighter for justice. That's what she learned, and then she instilled it in her children in a way that a father could not have. Fathers get other responsibilities that a father could not have. So information was being passed on. And then Hazrat Hassan, Hussein, Zainab, and we know their story. They were powerful people who changed the course of history. All of these people did. But, of course, we know how that is. So, and then we know Salama, the wife of the Prophet, उनका तो हम जानते हैं कि वो उम्मुल मसाकीन कहलाती थी, कि वो लोगों की हेल्प करती थी. She was very rich. And then she fell on hard times. और जब सुलह हुदैबिया का वाक़या हुआ था, तो वो साथ थी. उनसे प्रॉफिट ने पूछा कि जब everybody was very down, कि ये किस तरह की डील कर ली है हमने. प्रॉफिट सल्लल्लाहु भी बहुत ही अफसोस में थे. उनको भी समझ नहीं आ रहा था कि क्या करें. तो उन्होंने जाके पूछा उम्मे सलमा से कि क्या करना चाहिए इस मौके पे. तो उम्मे सलमा ने कहा कि अगर आप अपना जो भी करना है आगे का, सर बाल उतारने और सब आप करेंगे, तो फिर आप वो करें, ज़िबा करें, कुर्बानी करें, तो everybody will follow you. Just don't say anything. Of course they're upset. आप करेंगे and they'll follow you. And then that's what happened. He started, and then everybody followed him. Of course, all the sahabas followed him. So she was a smart woman. She knew what to do and how to conduct, and because the Prophet ﷺ was emotional too. She was too, but he was emotional, but he was a leader. He had to show them the way. And he needed help in how to proceed. And she was there. And she was the one he went to for a lot of help, for a lot of issues that he couldn't resolve, or he was confused about, or he needed a second opinion for. He went to her. And Hazrat Aisha, we know she was a scholar, and most of the hadiths after Hazrat Abu Huraira are narrated by her. She was basically a doctor, because she had learned most of her information from the Prophet ﷺ and her, and then she kept learning even after the Prophet ﷺ died. She was 18 when he died, and this was basically her job. She was a scholar. She taught people. People came from all over the world to learn from her. And in none of these examples that I've given you, I see anywhere where these women were stopped from speaking, or told that they can't do these jobs outside of their homes, or they weren't accepted as scholars और I mean हज़रत आयशा से मर्द भी आते थे information देने और learn करने up until her death. You know, she was a scholar, she was a learned scholar, that there was no issue in that. And we know कि जब हज़रत आयशा पे इल्ज़ाम लगा था तो nobody could defend her because it was a he said she said type of thing. There was no proof of that. And she was actually very upset with the Prophet ﷺ and her father, Hazrat Abu Bakr, that you don't believe me. And she had gone to her father's house, Hazrat Abu Bakr's house. The Prophet ﷺ came to her before unke liye phir wahi aayi thi. The Prophet ﷺ came to her right before the wahi, and he said, you can still ask for forgiveness. Allah's forgiveness. And she said, I haven't done anything wrong, so why would I ask for forgiveness? And that's the boldness. You're talking to the Prophet, and you're talking to your father, who is a very well-known, powerful person, and the Prophet of Allah. If you were talking to any other leader, any other person who has the right to punish you, you would be a little bit more careful, would you not? And even Abu Bakr told him, told her, can you be a little bit nicer, to the Prophet, and she didn't really, she just turned her back to both the Prophet and Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. And then the ayahs were revealed, completely exonerating her, and actually kind of scolding the Prophet ﷺ for not believing her or not taking her side to begin with. Because the Prophet was kind of like, everybody's saying this, and I can't just say, no, she's in the right. People will say, well, you're just saying that because she's your wife, and you're just saying that because you want to believe her. You don't really know what happened. So he was a little bit, kind of, okay, I'm not going to say anything. I have to wait for some proof, or I have to wait from something from Allah. And so he was just kind of backed off. So those ayahs came down. Those are in Surah Nisa. Please go check them out. They're beautiful ayahs, and it was revealed in those ayahs that 4 witnesses, or just don't say it. If you don't have 4 witnesses saying that this woman has committed zina, then you cannot put any blame on her. And then she was exonerated that she has not done anything wrong. And Allah said to the Prophet that, and why didn't you not believe her? When she told you that she did not do it, when she didn't do anything wrong, why did you not believe it? I mean, it is just so to the point and literal, and it was just slammed shut. The whole thing was closed shut in her favor. It was beautiful. And then Hazrat Abu Bakr uske baad wahi aayi, and the Prophet repeated it. Hazrat Abu Bakr said कि Prophet का शुक्रिया अदा करो wahi के बाद. And she turned to her father and she said कि why should I thank the Prophet ﷺ? It was Allah who exonerated me, not the Prophet. So I mean, these women were not stifled in any way. They were not scared of or broken down in any way, and not unable to speak, unable to, be themselves, or not able to, say what they want to say. They were applying themselves completely. They were being who they were. Things were happening. There were bad people in the world at that time too, like this example. There are many other examples you'll find throughout history. But they were dealing with it in their own way. They're dealing with it the way they were supposed to. Their men were taking care of them the way they were supposed to, and their men were messing up like every other man, every other relationship. But they were dealing with it with dignity, with pride, with integrity, and they were speaking their mind. They were fighting for what they knew they deserved. You see, but it will never be a perfect situation. But what we have in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet will be perfect. It will stay like this. And we can always go back to it. Things in the world will change back and forth. There will be so many different types of people, of, definition of men, definition of women. All of this will come and go, but this, what we have in our religion, will always stay here. And the one thing that Western feminism seems to forget or completely discount is men. You see, when we were talking about Western feminism, there was no mention of men. Women's right and women's suffrage, and then women had this and women had that. And it was all dependent on men giving women all these things. But there was no mention of men. With Islam, men and women are running the world together. So men can't survive without women, and women can't survive without men. We are partners in this. We don't have any animosity towards each other, because we have to, not just as husband and wife or in relationships, or because we're attracted to each other or whatever else like that. That too, but other than that, we're father and daughter, we're brother and sister, we're cousins, we're all sorts of messy relationships. We're so many things to each other. And we have to work together. And you can't discount that in an Islamic culture. We need each other. Men need us for so many different things. And we need men for so many different things. Somebody, actually, it's almost a perfect example of this, that, there's a trend on Instagram, and I come across it when I'm scrolling, that men, which is a really nice thing actually, make these videos or sound recording of their voice as if like you're on a call, calling the women if they're in an Uber alone and they feel like the Uber driver is kind of being funky. ऐसे इस तरह होता है ना कि आप कहीं अकेले ऊबर में जा रहे हैं. अमेरिका में तो काफ़ी इस तरह होता है, अमेरिका एंड वेस्टर्न वर्ल्ड में, कि आप अकेले जा रहे हैं, रात का वक्त देर है, और आपको ऊबर ड्राइवर थोड़ा सा ज़रा आपको लग रहा है कि ज़रा ठीक नहीं है, आप परेशान हो रहे हैं, तो इस तरह के बनाने लगे मर्द वहाँ पे ऑडियोज़ एंड वीडियोज़ के, आपसे आपका कोई घर वाला या आपका husband, your boyfriend, or whoever is talking to you. Okay, how long are you going to be? When are you getting home? Or you're close? Okay, well, I'm waiting for you. Or do you want me to come pick you up in this place? Like having a conversation, ताकि Uber driver को लगे कि there's somebody with you, or somebody's going to find out if you don't make it home on time, or something of that sort, which is a very nice idea. But it's usually with, husbands or boyfriends or some romantic interest, for the most part. If you're alone and you're going home alone, you don't have somebody. And it's really interesting that for them, it always has to be somebody that you're like, probably living with, or going to see, or coming back from seeing a friend, or a love interest, right? And I was thinking about it, and I was like, and it's nighttime, and of course, who are you going to approach? Who are you going to call? You don't have anybody real to call, right? And there was a lot of people, they were like, yeah, this is a really good idea, because we don't have anyone to call, and we don't have anyone who can take a call this late night, and who can, help us with this, and who can, so it's a great idea, which it is, it's a great idea. But I was thinking in terms of myself, and whenever I go to visit, and sometimes I do have to take Uber, and many times I only take Uber when my husband's not in town, not with me. But it's hilarious that I've never had to worry about कि मैं किसको कॉल करूँगी अगर मुझे ज़रूरत पड़ी. I have so many chachas and mamus and cousins and up to nephews, और मेरे इतनी लड़कियाँ उनके मियाँ, like I have tons of people. Like अगर मुझे जिस भी एरिया में मैं हूँ, whether it's अमेरिका के जिस शहर के जिस एरिया में मैं हूँ, I have like 4 or 5 people that I can just like text and say, okay, मैं इस area से इस area में जा रही हूँ, अपने मियाँ से कहना कि अगर मुझे ज़रूरत पड़ी तो I'll call him. It's not even या अपने भांजे को बताऊंगे या भतीजे को या whoever कि I'm gonna call you if I need you. Just stay on कि मैं speaker पर डाल के तो मैं कहूँ okay, so I'm here and I'm going here. किसी ना किसी को तो मैं ज़रूर बताती हूँ हमेशा कि here मैं इधर जा रही हूँ इधर हूँ, of course. But अगर किसी मर्द की आवाज़ की ज़रूरत हो, just for safety. We don't have that problem. I don't just need a boyfriend or a husband. There's so many, alhamdulillah, so many men in our own lives, in our families, in our friends, that were covered in that sense. I hope that makes sense, that we have a system. And again, when we talk about, go back to that kalam, that's what it is, protection for women in general. We can be independent, we can be living our lives, but men will be jerks. Certain men, not all men, but men will be jerks. They will try to use their power to control us, to abuse us, to whatever. That's when the men who are our protectors, who are doing their jobs right, are there for us. And there's more of them. There is definitely more of them. Right? So these are the differences. These are women, Western women with Western feminist ideas, who are looking for men that they don't know, they've never met in their lives, their recordings to protect themselves. And I was thinking, I have like so many options. I could call somebody in Pakistan on WhatsApp and just be like, hey, just talk to me for like 5 minutes. I mean, I have cousins and you know, relatives and people I know very closely in Pakistan where I can be sitting in America and just be like, okay, I'm in an Uber. मुझसे बात कर लो 5 minutes. I'm going to put you on speaker. You know, I mean, but this is part of our Islamic feminism where we are ready to be, we're here. And that doesn't mean कि मुझे Uber में जाना छोड़ देना चाहिए. That just means that I have help. I have people on my side to help me, to protect me, to make sure I'm okay. क्योंकि दुनिया में जो ख़राब लोग हैं, जो लोग गड़बड़ कर रहे हैं, वो तो नहीं जाएंगे ना कहीं. उनको तो कुछ नहीं कर सकते. वो तो उस ज़माने में भी थे, इस ज़माने में भी हैं. वो उस तरह के फेमिनिस्ट के लिए भी हैं, हमारे लिए भी हैं, हर तरह के लोगों के लिए हैं. So the point is that if you depend on each other, men can depend on us for the things that we are better at. We can depend on them for the things that they are better at. It works out better, it goes smoothly, and it's easier for everybody. We don't have to keep comparing ourselves to each other. We don't need to try to be better than each other, because they're fine the way they are, and we're fine the way we are. We are the way we are. We just need to see the best in ourselves, and we need to find what is good about ourselves and work on it. We've actually given ourselves kind of a inferiority complex, trying to compare ourselves to men, because if we're comparing ourselves, we'll never find the positive and the good, because we can never be like a different, completely almost different species. We cannot be like men. We can't look like them. We can't act like them. We can't think like them, because we are not like them. So we will never compare. We will never be good enough. If that is what good enough or perfection looks like, then we will never be good enough. We will never be perfect. If we compare ourselves to other women who've achieved things, who've done good in their lives, then yeah. And by compare, I don't mean in terms of their achievements, but in terms of what we might be capable of, then yeah, maybe we can get there. So let's not worry about feminism in terms of what other people in other worlds are doing. Let's look at our role models. Let's look at the knowledge that they had. Let's look at the need to spread that knowledge. Let's look at the need for spreading justice, bringing happiness to other people, training their own children. We keep talking about our girls should be different. We should teach our girls. We should teach our boys. This is what these women were doing. They were teaching their girls. They were teaching their boys. They're teaching their men and women. We talk about Hazrat Aisha. We talk about Salama. She was also very knowledgeable. These women were teaching, of course, their own children, but men and women, and the whole community. So let's get involved. There's many ways to teach people. There are many ways to, spread the knowledge. Let's do all of that. Political activism, political, like Hazrat Fatima Radhiyallahu anha. I've only mentioned a few people. There's so many other women to talk about, so much to talk about what women at that time have contributed to our lives. So, yeah. And I would encourage you guys to please write, read more, research more about this topic, and we'll try to take one of the subtopics from here and discuss more on that, because I feel like we missed so much, and I would have liked to discuss more on this. And I'm sorry this went on so long. There was so much in this, and I wish we could have covered more. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating in the conversation. Have a good night, good day, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are, and I will see you next week.